Hey everyone, welcome back to another week of the Triple Play. This is Danielle, and today I am joined by Sam, and we have a lot to talk about. A lot has gone on in the past week, but first we're going to start with some of the biggest news here on Rocky Top, and that is we have a new men's basketball coach. Rick Barnes was hired last Tuesday. It became official. Reports were going on Monday whenever we had the show. We were saying that it looked like it was going to be Barnes, but we still weren't sure at that moment, but it was Rick Barnes. Like I said, hired on Tuesday. He was fired by Texas technically Saturday, but did not become official until Sunday. And he had already been in talks with UT about the job. He had been talking to Dave Hart, apparently. During his press conference at Texas, somebody asked him if he thought he would be coaching anytime soon. He said, well, it would be sooner than you may think. So, I mean, this guy definitely has credentials coming in here. Very powerful coach. He spent 17 years at Texas. Before that, he'd also been a head coach at Clemson, Providence, and George Mason, and he'd also been an assistant coach at Ohio State, Alabama, George Mason, Davidson, and North State Academy. But, I mean, if you look at this guy, with his time at Texas, like I said, 17 years, and he's the all-time winningest coach in Texas basketball history, going with 402 wins and 180 losses. His overall record as head coach in all of his schools is 604 wins with 314 losses. So that's a win-loss percentage of 66%, which puts him at ninth among active head coaches. At Texas, he went to 16 NCAA tournaments out of a total of 22 NCAA tournament trips as a head coach, with 6 Sweet 16s, 3 Elite Eights, and 1 Final Four, which was in 2003. But, I mean, if you look at the players this guy's had too, I mean, he's just absolutely incredible. Kevin Durant is pretty much the top one. He's had 2 players who went number 2 overall in the NBA draft. TJ Ford was the other one back in 2003. It was LaMarcus Aldridge in 2006. TJ Ford and Kevin Durant were 2 of the national players of the years that he's had in the past 13 seasons. But I mean, with 23 draft picks, all those trips to the NCAA, this could be really promising for the Vols.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a great hire. I mean, literally, the biggest thing you could say against him is, well, he's old. How long is he going to stay here? Because he's 61. That's the biggest negative about this for Tennessee. And when that's the biggest negative, when you look at the state our basketball program's been in, that's a pretty successful hire.
Absolutely.
Everything lined up perfectly for this one. Dave Hart was the athletic director. Barnes just happened to get fired. We just happened to have to fire Tyndall. There were so many things that had to line up, and they all lined up perfectly. You mentioned some of the players he had. You know, just looking back, in 2011, he had 3 players that were drafted in the first round.
Right.
Tristan Thompson, 4th overall to Cleveland. Jordan Hamilton, 26th overall to Dallas. And Corey Joseph, 29th overall to San Antonio. I mean, it's proven throughout the years. And an interesting thing I found, as of March 31st, 2015, Barnes' 23 NBA draft picks have made a combined basketball earning of $387.8 million.
That's insane.
That's impressive. I mean, because you mentioned Ford, Aldridge, Durant, DJ Augustine, who was drafted 9th, Avery Bradley drafted 19th, Damian Jones 24th, plus Thompson, Hamilton, Joseph.
Right.
And there's even more first-round picks if you go back into the early
13
90s.
first-round picks overall.
But look at where these guys were drafted. It's not just they were drafted in the first round. Most of them were drafted in the top 10.
Right.
Okay. This is, you can go on and on and on about Rick Barnes and his list of accomplishments. And, the man walks into the SEC, and he's the winningest coach in the SEC actively right now. He hasn't even coached a game yet. His 22 NCAA tournament appearances are more than we have in our program history. Tennessee's got the man that can turn Tennessee back into what we saw in the Pearl era, what we know the program is capable of. We've got all the facilities needed here at UT to recruit the best players in the country, recruit the next Kevin Durant, recruit the next DJ Augustine, TJ Ford. Now we have the coach who can help bring those in too.
Definitely.
So, and for Tennessee fans, okay, I don't know how much of a personality guy he's going to be as far as like a Donnie Tyndall and Bruce Pearl. He's not that guy, I don't think. He's also a little bit older than them, so that's going to make him act a little bit differently. But he's going to play the style of basketball that Tennessee fans want to see. his Texas teams typically have played an up-tempo offense and an up-tempo defense, similar to what both Tyndall has done, but more similar to what Bruce has done.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the kind of basketball Tennessee wants. I don't see how you can find enough negatives to make this a loss for Tennessee in any way.
And like you were saying with personality, though, after watching the press conference, given all the mic problems that were there, from everything that he said and just his persona in that, I mean, he's kind of like Tennessee was meant to happen for him. I know a lot of people were saying that he's definitely like the Southern grandpa sort of basketball coach that you could have, and I do see that. I mean, he's from North Carolina. He's really close by to his hometown, which is great, but I mean, I honestly think he's going to be a breath of fresh air for this team. And he even said during his photo shoot with the team right after the press conference, he was quoted as just saying, well, I'm a pretty happy guy. And I mean, you can definitely see that just from how he acted during the press conference. And I mean, I have a really good feeling about this guy. I haven't had this kind of a good feeling since Butch Jones was hired. So, I mean, that's saying something.
I had questions and kind of good feelings with Donnie Tyndall, but obviously those didn't work out well at the end. Would have loved to see what he could have done, if he had been able to stay around for, a long time. Mm-hmm. But that's behind us now. But with Barnes, I mean, it's like you said, he mentioned in his press conference, how just walking around the campus, walking around the facility, he could just feel the energy.
Yeah.
He said he loved the One Tennessee concept. You could feel the passion for it. And, you could tell he kind of seemed a little bit re-energized to be here. And he did. He mentioned his love for Tennessee. He said, how honored he was to be, the next head basketball coach. And he said, there's been a lot of great coaches from Ray Mears down, but he maybe understands Tennessee better than any of them because, his wife is a Tennessee alumnus.
Right.
From back in 1974.
Yeah.
He talked a lot in the press conference about how he used to come up here to visit her, watch Tennessee football games, watch Tennessee basketball games. And, he seems like he already knows a lot about UT and can't wait to learn everything possible about the university. And it's a guy who's passionate about how we do things here on Rocky Top and already knows a lot about how we do things here on Rocky Top. So I can't wait give me tip-off for the first preseason game of next year already. Realize that's jumping way ahead.
Yeah.
But I'm just ready to see what his teams can do on the court already. I'm excited for Tennessee men's basketball again after really a disappointing and very difficult year to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, going 500 on the season, it's rough. It's not easy for a team, and especially whenever, granted, Tyndall was a first-year coach, but there was so much hype going into this, in my opinion. So many people were looking at him coming off of what Kwanzaa did and everything. So, things just didn't match up. I feel like with Barnes, there's just a lot of potential. And you mentioned out of the 13 first-round picks that he had, a majority of them did actually come in the top 10. 6 of them did overall. So, that's a lot to look forward to there. This guy, he can get good players. He knows how to coach them, and I think Tennessee fans have a lot to be looking forward to with him. A lot of good vibes on campus with him. Excited to see what happens with Coach Barnes. We're happy to have him here on Rocky Top. But we're going to go ahead and transition over to women's basketball for the Lady Vols. The season has come to an end. The trip to Tampa did not happen, and it was a heartbreaker for sure.
Definitely.
Lady Vols lost to Maryland in the Elite Eight, 58-48. Going into halftime, Lady Vols were only down by 1, and it was looking okay. Struggling happened with shooting all game. But we'll get to those stats in a minute. Going into the second half, though, Maryland just found momentum, did not turn back. Ariel Massengale had 16 points, 4 rebounds, and 1 assist. But like I said, it was a rough day shooting overall for the Lady Vols. Here's the breakdown of their shooting. From field goal range, they were 32%. 3-point range, they went 4 for 22, which gives them 18%. And the free throw line, after coming off of such a fantastic performance where you had 96% shooting from the line against Gonzaga in the Sweet 16, they shot 0% from free throw. They went 0 for 1. And I want to say they had 16 fouls called against them.
Yeah, it was definitely... we were talking about this before we came on the show with some questionable calls at the Kentucky-Wisconsin game, which we'll get to here in a little bit. But this was another game where, Tennessee, you should have played better. You should have shot the ball better. Definitely you can't place all the blame on the refs. I firmly believe in that. The ref, blaming on the refs gets used too much as just an excuse for why your team lost.
That is true.
We can all agree upon that. We've all done it. But this was a case where you can say the refs did play a role in this game.
Definitely.
My dad was a high school football official for 20 years. And the thing he always said that his crew talked about every single time before they went out was, let's not make an impact on the game.
Right.
That's the goal an official always needs to have. Is I don't want to be remembered as even being part of this game. The refs made an impact in this game that will be remembered for this game in part.
Absolutely.
But like I said, Tennessee should have shot better. The foul calling in this game was so ridiculous. I mean, I was there. At one point, I really just wanted to question, is assault and battery a crime in the state of Washington? Because it sure doesn't look like it unless you're wearing orange or white. But, I mean, from such a great effort in that Gonzaga game.
Oh, fantastic game.
To have the season in the way it did. I mean, heartbreaking, like you said. I just happened to be sitting directly in line with Ariel Massengale when the final buzzer went off, and she just collapsed. I mean, she didn't want to get off the floor. Like, three people had to carry her back to the locker room. I mean, it was similar if you watched the women's Final Four last night when South Carolina lost. It was similar to the scene there with several of their players. And I know, she wasn't the only senior upset. I mean, a great senior class, one of the most impactful in, the history of the program, which we're going to get ready to talk a little bit more about. But it was an awful way to see us go down and see the season end. Not so much because we didn't get to Tampa, but just how that game played out.
Definitely. And, I mean, looking back at the season, the Lady Vols did finish 30-6, 15-1 in the SEC. You can't say enough about this team.
No,
they gave their all for every single game. All 30 of those wins were hard-fought wins. A lot of them closer than others, just kind of like in the men's. Their wins were definitely a lot closer than others. But, I mean, this team will definitely be one of my favorite Lady Vols teams ever. There's so much heart with this team. And, I mean, coming off of last year, whenever you had one senior, you had Megan Simmons out there. And these three, between Isabel, Sierra, and Ariel, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen more heart from a group of seniors than these three. Definitely.
I mean, you can talk about this senior class forever.
Oh, absolutely.
They mean so much to the program. Their legacy is, there's no questioning their legacy for so many different ways. And like you said, 30 wins. It's the first time for Coach Whaley she's gotten 30 wins.
Right.
First time she's made it to the Elite Eight. It's the first 30-win season since 2007.
2007.
For the program. So we've got the program heading back to the level it needs to be after a little bit of a slack off.
Right.
Obviously with how things ended at the end of the Pat Summitt era and the start of the Warlick era. But, this team is the most complete team Tennessee's had in the last couple of years.
Oh,
the only thing they really lacked was that player who, when the things got tough, said, give me the ball, I'll put it in, I'll score. And at times they had that.
Definitely.
With Izzy, then Izzy got hurt, and that's when there seemed to be a lot of real questions. Or when Izzy just couldn't get anything done because she was being double and triple teamed. There was no one else. He said, all right, Izzy can't. Give me the ball, I'll do it.
Right.
But you look at the senior class, all three of them members of the 1,000 Point Club. They ended up with 3,000 and something plus points between the three of them.
Right.
I mean, you mentioned the heart and the leadership. These girls have no quit. Obviously, I mean, Izzy's a prime example of that. Tearing her meniscus early in the season, and then, coming back from it. Unfortunately, to tear the ACL, I mean, couldn't have been a worse ending to the career for her. No one wanted to see it happen that way. But still, the heart she showed,
even from the
bench, was amazing.
Fantastic.
I mean, you can't say leadership in the Lady Vols program without mentioning Sierra Burdick probably every other word.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, Seabird is a prime example of someone who carried the passion for the Lady Vols name
absolutely
to the extreme level. And Massengale and Izzy too. But the thing that is going to be the thing I look at most about this class, this is the last class recruited by Pat Summitt.
Right. And I think that's where the legacy really comes in.
Pat Summitt's legacy and impact on the program is now forever changed because there will be no more players that will step foot and play on the Summit wearing the orange and white that she helped recruit. And for her last class last year you had the two seniors in Megan Simmons and Tabor Spaney. And they represented well for, a Pat Summitt recruited players. This year's class, though, if you could have picked a way for Pat Summitt's recruiting class to go out and how they represent themselves, how they carry the Lady Vols name, this class did it 100% right. You know, there's no, I don't think there's a doubt in anyone's mind that Pat Summitt has to be one of the proudest people in the world right now because of how these girls that she recruited, all from different backgrounds, all who came in with different roles. I mean, Massengill was the first player Pat Summitt ever said she's going to be starter as a freshman. All the hype around Sierra Burdick. A lot of people were like, Izzy who?
Right.
Only Isabel Harrison maybe turned into the best of the three and the most important player of the three. I mean, this class's impact, you can talk about it all day long.
Definitely.
It's going to be probably one of, if not the most important classes and most remembered classes in Lady Vols history. And that's saying a lot.
Absolutely. I mean, the Lady Vols squad, I mean, if you look back at, like, the early 2000s, I mean, sort of early 2000s, we'll say, like, 2006 or so, right around that time, whenever you had Candace Parker, Angie Bjorklund, Shannon Bobbitt, like, those girls, that's a legacy there, too. I mean, if you would put, like, those teams with this team, I mean, imagine that super team you would have if you could, make, seriously, a fantasy Lady Vols team. And
just look at this year. This year's team alone could have been that.
Oh, definitely.
The reason why one of the main reasons why Tennessee is not in Tampa Bay right now, possibly not getting ready to lace up to play for a championship trophy, is just injuries got to them.
Definitely.
I mean, losing Mercedes Russell at the beginning of the year killed you. It especially hurt you when Izzy went down. And when Izzy went down the last time, I think everybody kind of knew that was the final straw.
Right.
But still, look at what this team did. You lose your most important and arguably best player in Isabel Harrison to the ACL. You still make it to the Elite Eight.
Right.
I mean, come on. You were still a 2 seed. You still made it to the Elite Eight. And if you had played better against South Carolina, you would have been the SEC tournament champions too. Then possibly a 1 seed. And then, well, we all saw how easy of a bracket South Carolina got. That very well could have been Tennessee.
Right.
So you wish they could have stayed healthy, but and you're sad for how things ended. You're sad for these girls leaving. You're sad that it was Pat Summitt's last class. But look at next year. Holy cow, the potential for next year.
Definitely.
Diamond Shields, the 2 or 3 recruits I think we have signed. I mean, and then you look at the talent that will be back from this year.
Right.
If you have a healthy Mercedes Russell, this team could be a UConn of this year. I realize that's saying a lot.
Right.
You don't know.
There's
they'll
that
be
potential.
young. They'll be inexperienced, but the potential to
absolutely
be kind of on a UConn run during games that we saw them this year, where they're beating teams by 30 or 40 points. That's the kind of potential they're going to have. The offense.
Definitely. Yeah, but overall, good season for the Lady Vols. Good's an understatement. Fantastic season for the Lady Vols. 30-6, like I said, 15-1 in the SEC. We're proud of the Lady Vols. I know everybody here on Rocky Top is. Hard-fought season. Hate to see it end the way it did, but definitely a strong performance from the Lady Vols. But we're going to go ahead and talk about the Women's Championship, the Final Four. Like we've already mentioned, did happen last night. The South Carolina game against Notre Dame. Absolutely crazy. I mean, I was on the edge of my seat watching it. Insane. 2 number 1 seeds. I have to make a quick note. All number 1 seeds from this tournament for the women's made it to Tampa, which, I mean, I think a lot of people saw coming. I mean, these 4 teams were super strong, but I did not expect this game to be as close as it was. Honestly, I thought Notre Dame was just going to come out and just completely dominate South Carolina.
Oh, you and me both.
Because Notre Dame, I've said all season, I've said even before the season, if anybody can beat UConn, because everybody picked UConn as the favorite all season, if anybody can beat UConn, it was going to be Notre Dame. So, Notre Dame for this game, they win 66-65. Looking at their shooters, their top scorer had 22 points, and that was Jewel Lloyd. 22 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal. I mean, she had a great game. Looking over at South Carolina, their top scorer was Ajaya Wilson, who came off of the bench, which is just fantastic for her. I mean, the bench players for South Carolina have been strong this season. All of their players have showed potential. But for her to come out and score 20 points with 9 rebounds, that's insane. 2 players had 9 rebounds for South Carolina, and she was one of them. The other one was Elena Coates, also on the bench there. But Wilson, 20 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, and 4 blocks. 4 blocks. Those were huge for South Carolina. But, I mean, Notre Dame, they had on their bench, out of their 3 bench players, there were 6 points total from the bench. So majority of their scoring came from their starters as expected. But I mean, Notre Dame just showed so much fight in this game.
I mean, both of these teams are they're loaded with talent.
Definitely.
Obviously, they're number one seeds for a reason. They both earned it. I mean, we saw South Carolina, both times the Lady Vols played them. Matchup of two of the best teams in the country, the two best teams in the SEC. I'm not going to sit here and say South Carolina owned us, but they owned us in the fact that they made us play their way.
Right.
And that's been the key to South Carolina's success.
Definitely.
They make you play how they want you to play. And they did it to Notre Dame. Notre Dame Jewel Lloyd, I don't think you can say enough about her. She's
absolutely not.
Amazing. I mean, when you sit there and you think about, amazing Notre Dame players over the last couple of years, and you look at Skylar Diggins, you look at Kayla McBride, Jewel Lloyd may wind up being better than either one of us and make us say Skylar and Kayla who.
Right.
I mean, she's got that much potential. She's that good. And, how that game ended. Holy cow.
It was insane.
It was... I was sitting as about on the edge of my seat for that one as I was the Kentucky-Wisconsin Final Four game on the men's side.
Right.
Both those games were crazy finishes. I thought it would be close, and by close I mean under 10.
Right.
But greater than 5. But no, I didn't see this coming. It was a great game, and it really represented the women's game well. The women's basketball doesn't always get the respect it deserves. But this game showed, women's basketball can be just as exciting as men's basketball.
Right.
Which is great for the women's game, and it's great for both those programs to be a part of it. South Carolina's taken a step they've never been to before.
Right.
Now they know how to get there. Now they just have to learn how to get back there. And they're going to be just as good of a team next year and just as tough of competition for the SEC to have to deal with. So they can get back there again. It's just now... Okay, we made it to the Final Four. Now how do we build upon that and actually make it to a championship game?
Definitely. And this was definitely an exciting game. And if you look over at the Maryland-Connecticut game that happened a little later on, it went as expected.
Yeah.
Connecticut just comes out, and they're just Connecticut. That's the easiest way to put it.
Yeah.
They beat Maryland 81-58. So it kind of makes you wonder if Tennessee would have if they would have beaten Maryland, what would have happened in this game. But I know last week we were talking a lot about the potential that Dayton could have beating Connecticut. Dayton goes in looking really, really strong, but Connecticut just took control of them in that game as well. But for UConn in this, their top scorer, was Brianna Stewart, who scored 25 points. She also had 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 4 blocks. So, this is pretty much normal from a leading player that you would see from UConn. But, Maryland, they looked really strong going into halftime. They were down by 11, granted, but they could come back from that deficit. But UConn, UConn's UConn. You knew that they were going to win this, but
like you said, all you gotta do is say UConn's UConn.
Right.
It's been the same thing in men's basketball all year long as it's been women's.
Right.
It's Kentucky versus the field in men's. It's UConn versus the field in women's.
Right.
But real quick, and I'll say this about if Tennessee had beat Maryland and made it. The thing that Maryland's a great team. Maryland has a little bit more depth when it comes to size than we do right now. We talked about the injuries we had this year.
Right.
So that would have obviously hurt us because, UConn's probably got more hype than anybody in the country.
Absolutely.
But the thing you can't measure with this Tennessee team, and we talked about it, and it was proven all year long, is the heart and the never say die attitude, and we're never out of this. That's the X factor that you can't predict. So would have loved to have seen how that game would have turned out. But unfortunately we didn't get the chance.
Right.
And it's been forever since we've actually played UConn.
Right.
But, UConn's gotten knocked a lot, and rightfully so. They deserve to be knocked for how they've beaten teams in, the American Conference. Because I'm not trying to be mean here, but when it comes to women's basketball, it's just not a good conference. So it's easy for UConn to go, 18-0 in conference play.
Right.
But when they've had to, they've proved it. Dayton came out and played like, yes, we belong. Yes, we can beat you. UConn shut them down. They did the same to Maryland.
Right.
And they beat them the way that, everyone expected them to beat them. So it's going to be a tough matchup in the championship game for Notre Dame. Like you said, I'm with you on that. There's anyone who can beat UConn, it's Notre Dame.
Absolutely.
They've got the revenge factor just like Wisconsin had against Kentucky on the men's side.
Mm-hmm.
They lost this exact same matchup a year ago.
Right.
I'm clearly not. I've lived in East Tennessee my whole life. I'm never going to cheer for UConn.
Absolutely.
I don't think that's the one team I don't think I can be unbiased about and just sit there and watch and not cheer for whoever's playing, whoever they're playing. But it's hard to imagine UConn losing, but we saw it with Kentucky on the men's side. It's doable.
Right.
So it's Notre Dame's got the best shot out of anybody.
Definitely. I'm really excited about this matchup. I mean, Notre Dame's been a fun team to watch this season. And, I mean, you almost hate to say it, but UConn is a fun team to watch, too.
They are a fun team to watch just with how they can score, but you hate saying it.
I mean, whenever it comes to scoring, they're a lot like Kentucky. They will score no matter what the cost, whether it's in the paint or just, like, shooting from literally, like, 4 states away. Just shoot from there and they'll make it. But, I mean, it's going to be very exciting on Tuesday night. That game is set for an 8:30 tip on ESPN, so definitely be sure to tune into that. But looking over at the men's Final Four, what a day that was. Saturday was a lot of fun, but we're going to start with the first game of the day, Duke beating Michigan State 81-61. I mean, going into this game, Duke definitely was the more powerful team. I said last week that I thought Michigan State could definitely have a strong chance of doing well, but losing by 20 was kind of expected, I think. But Michigan State, I mean, with Tom Izzo, this is a guy who, his offense, he can run different offenses any way he wants to, but his defense is always where he struggles, and it definitely showed in this game. Looking over at Duke, Okafor, 18 points, kind of low from what I was expecting. I thought he'd be over 20 in this game, but 18 points, 6 rebounds, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. Really impressive game for him, but Winslow, 19 points with 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, no blocks there, but those 9 rebounds were big for him, but Duke just... they looked really powerful in this game.
I mean, Duke did, and you expected Duke to be in the Final Four when the tournament started. You expected them more than likely to win the championship. I had them getting to the championship against Kentucky, and pretty much I had to fill out like 5 brackets for different things I was in. I had them getting to the championship in all but I think 1 game.
Yeah.
And that was me being stupid and picking Villanova to make it to the championship game. Clearly that didn't work out well. But Duke's a tough team. They've always have been. They got the man who I think, as far as from a standpoint of today's coaches, is the best coach in men's basketball.
Right.
And I mean, he's going up against one of the probably 3 or 4. He's definitely top 5 in Tom Izzo.
Right.
I've got a lot of respect for him. He's a great coach. I mean, and this was a game that, okay, it was 36-25 in favor of Duke at the half. Michigan State just didn't have the offense at the end of the day. They showed plenty of sparks. They could just never put it together long enough. And part of that is just, you mentioned it, Duke's so talented.
Absolutely.
There's a team in the country that maybe, from a talent-wise, was as good as Kentucky, that second par, most talented team. It's probably Duke.
Right. No, I agree there. And speaking of Kentucky, we're just not going to put it off any further. There's no one perfect in the NCAA anymore. And thanks to Wisconsin,
there will not be an undefeated champion.
Exactly. And it's kind of a beautiful thing. I know pretty much every UT fan, I think most basketball fans, if you don't wear blue, was rooting for Wisconsin on this one. I know I was for sure. But Wisconsin comes into this game and just proves what everybody knew was out there. Kentucky can lose. Wisconsin wins 71-64. This was a great game, not gonna lie. Kaminsky, 20 points, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 blocks. This is what you expect to see from the AP Player of the Year, the Naismith Player of the Year. I mean, I knew Kaminsky was gonna win this going into the tournament. I mean, I knew he was gonna get those Player of the Year honors. He's been stellar. Between him and Decker only had 16 points in this game, but I mean, Decker's still clutch as ever. But looking over at Kentucky's scores, your leading scorer, Karl Anthony Towns, as expected, 16 points. But he also had 9 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 1 block. Full stat line for him. But, I mean, if you can hold any of the Kentucky scorers under 20, that is impressive. You had 3 players for Kentucky that were in double digits between Towns and both of the Harrisons. I thought the Harrisons would be a little bit more would be a little stronger in this matchup. Aaron got 12 points. Andrew had 13. But Wisconsin, they were fantastic. They were stellar. That's all I can say about Wisconsin in this game.
Okay, we were talking about this before we went on the air for the show, but Wisconsin, if there's a team that out in the entire country that was built to give Kentucky system problems, it was Wisconsin.
Right.
If there was a team that was as talented as Kentucky, but overrated or underrated, it was Wisconsin. They had all the talent they needed to stop Kentucky, to score on Kentucky, and they have the players, and they run a system that's going to give Kentucky's style trouble.
Right.
It's exactly what they did. You know, you mentioned the points. Let's look at minutes in the Final Four game. Willie Cauley-Steins, Towns, and Andrew Harrison were all 30-plus minutes for the Wildcats, with Lyles and Aaron Harrison just under 30. Okay, the 5 starters for the Badgers, Kaminsky played 37 minutes. Decker, 34. Hayes, 37. I'm going to probably mispronounce this. Gasser, 32. And then Koenig, I probably butchered that, 31. All their starters played 30-plus minutes.
Right.
Which is what we knew was going to happen. Those are the 5 best players. It was their best shots, their best shot to beat them. And, I mean, Frank the Tank, what more can you say about him? Except for apparently you don't want to have to play him on his birthday.
Right.
Which, of course, as Twitter blew up after the game, of course it was his birthday. I mean, this game was everything you want in a Final Four game.
Definitely.
A revenge game from last year. Wisconsin the entire time saying, put us to where we get Kentucky.
Right.
We want Kentucky. They said it from the end of the Big Ten championship game. We want Kentucky.
Right.
I mean, and this game gave you unfortunate drama at the end that you didn't want. We all know about Harrison's slip up at the mic. I think Kaminsky's taking a great high road, and it's probably right. Drop it. Besides, the last thing he cares about right now is getting Harrison punished. He got every bit he needed.
Right.
He's punished enough with losing. And I'm sure that's one thing Kaminsky's thinking about.
Definitely.
You saw all the riots and the burning of things in Lexington, and quite frankly, you mentioned all the Tennessee fans cheering against Kentucky.
Right.
I was kind of expecting, a dorm mattress to be taken on the street and lit on fire in celebration of Kentucky losing, not necessarily riots, in the Lexington area and
definitely
all the arrests in Indianapolis of Kentucky fans after the game for various charges. But I mean, it was a great game. It came down to the wire. We talked a little bit. The officials played a role for both teams towards the end.
Definitely.
You can't. I mean, I just said you
can't go one way.
You don't like talking about it. You don't want to have to blame it, but this is another game where they made an impact.
Big variable.
They did make an impact for both teams, but all of a sudden it was Wisconsin getting, you could say, gypped, and then all of a sudden it did switch to Kentucky that was getting questionable calls called on them, ticky-tacky, and then not getting calls when it seemed like they were getting mugged. But at the end of the day, Wisconsin found a way to take the momentum in the last couple minutes, and you have to wonder if Kentucky wasn't undefeated at this point, if they had lost a close game with as young of a team as they are, would they have been able to play differently? I always thought their best chance at winning a title was if they had at least one loss.
Right.
I know that sounds odd, but
no, that makes sense.
With such a young team, you've got to have that experience in a close game, especially where you're down late. And they didn't really get that with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 games, and they won. If they had lost one, I think this could be a different story. We could be talking about a one-loss Kentucky team heading in to play Duke, and which shade of blue wins.
Right. And I think it goes back to a lot of the games, like you said, having those close games in the regular season. I mean, we saw a few overtime games. We saw some really close ones, especially, I just keep thinking about the one against, LSU, but definitely the one against Florida, too. That one was very unexpected. But this team, I mean, I almost hate giving praise to Kentucky because it's like my dad would just be smiling at me saying this. But Kentucky this year was insane to watch. I mean, this team was fun, just like with UConn. I mean, it's kind of like, it's tough to say. It's like medicine right now for me. But it's just, this team was so impressive. I mean, each game, you wouldn't really know who to expect as the top player. But going into this one, I had a feeling with Towns. I mean, he's been really strong during this tournament. So, I mean, you kind of saw that he was going to be the top player for Kentucky in this game. But, I mean, overall, this was a great season for Kentucky. 38-1, 18-0 in the SEC. This team was just fun to watch. They made all of their games interesting. Even the game here in Knoxville, I will give them that. was tough to watch, but very
It was.
exciting game. But yeah, this was a good season for Kentucky. Kind of makes you wonder how they would have done against Duke. Like you said, if they would have had one loss in the season. But for them to get that one loss now, I know a lot of Kentucky fans are still mourning it. I don't know how my dad's doing. I haven't talked to him about the game. I only sent him my condolences. So that's where that has been left with the Kentucky fans that I know. But looking ahead at the championship, like we said, it's going to be Duke against Wisconsin. I think this will be a very interesting matchup. Tip-off is set for 9:18 tonight, so Monday night on CBS. Definitely going to be a really exciting game to look forward to. I think I see Wisconsin winning it. They just look really, really strong right now, but if Okafor comes out and just has a stellar night, could be a different story.
It's tough to say one team has the momentum over the other right now because they've
Right.
both got probably as much momentum as you can have.
Oh, absolutely.
Wisconsin, it opened up even, and then now Wisconsin has like a 1 or 2 point lead or 1 or 2 point favorite.
I think I saw 2 points last I looked.
Updated.
I think it was 2.
It was 2 the last time I looked at it. Looked yet to see if it's changed
Right.
again. But this one I think is come down to Okafor versus Kaminsky.
Right.
It's going to be how good does Frank the Tank play defense and shut them down.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think Frank Kaminsky is probably the reason Wisconsin wins it.
I agree.
I don't want to say he's the only reason Wisconsin's good because they're a talented team. We mentioned Decker. Hayes doesn't get enough credit. And, I mean, Ryan is one of the best coaches. I put him as one of the top 5 coaches in the college basketball. Of course, you've got Coach K. We all know what he's done. We all know what Duke's done. It's going to be an amazing game to watch. And, as much as I picked Wisconsin lately, so I want Wisconsin to win, we're getting a treat just by seeing this game. It doesn't really matter who wins. It's going to be a great game.
And I think what you mentioned with the momentum, I mean, if for Wisconsin, if Decker and Kaminsky have the same night that they did back in the Elite Eight, this could just be a completely dominant game from Wisconsin. There's a lot to look for. There are so many variables with both teams right now that you could look at for the game to go one way or the other. I'm so excited about this game.
And if you're Wisconsin, you've got to now switch. The one thing that scares me is you've got to switch off all the excitement of beating Kentucky and acting like you just won a national championship there. And you can't blame them for celebrating like that. I mean, you look at how much that meant to them. We all knew they had been drooling about the anticipation of this matchup since the beginning of the season. I think they won in Kentucky in an NCAA tournament game to open up their season. But now you've got to, can you switch modes? And get back. You didn't actually win the championship. Now you're playing for it. That's the one thing that I think maybe hurts Wisconsin.
Right. I definitely agree there. But like I said, championship game tonight, Monday night, tip-off at 9:18 on CBS. We're going to switch gears to Lady Vols softball real quick. Tough weekend for them, losing the series at Auburn, the number 7 team in the nation. I'm sorry, they lost the series 1-2. Thursday, they lost 6-2. Scarlett McSwain went 3 for 3 with a home run and an RBI. Great performance from such a young player. I mean, she has been stellar so far this season. And Gretchen Aucoin, I hope I said your name correctly, Aucoin, she went 1 for 3 with a home run. So I mean, those two had really good performances. Friday, Lady Vols got a really good win, 8-6. Aucoin, McSwain, Shalia Geethers, and Tori Lewis all hit home runs, which was really good for them. But the Lady Vols scored 4 runs in the 6th inning alone. I mean, that was a fantastic inning for them.
It was, and I mean, this was such a back and forth series.
It really was.
Tennessee played great in the 2nd and 3rd game of the series. They obviously didn't play too good in game 1.
Right.
But this was another game where, you knew coming into the season that the biggest thing Tennessee would have to deal with is who takes over in the circle. It's the first time you haven't had a Renfro in 5 years.
Right.
And, everyone knew Aaron Gabriel will probably be the top pitcher. You can't, I want to say she's our ace, but I'm not sure she's quite to that status of every other team's ace.
Right.
She has the potential to be there, and part of it she hasn't had the opportunity to play or prove it. I mean, look at who she's set behind. She's a junior this year, right? Or a redshirt sophomore, one of the two. I think she's a redshirt sophomore. I could be wrong. But she's had the opportunity to sit and watch, the Renfros play, but hasn't had the chance to play herself.
Right.
So that hurts her. But, it's been an up and down season, and a season like we haven't seen from Tennessee softball in a long time. And they had the hits, they just couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
They could never put it together in the circle. I mean,
right.
Game 3 of the series, which was an offensive explosion for both teams,
Definitely.
you had 4 players
Mm-hmm.
pitch for Tennessee, and all of them gave up at least 2 runs.
Right.
I mean, we've seen from Erin Gabriel, so much potential. She's gone. She's 11-4 now, I think, on the season. Junior. But she's either been really good or she's gotten just blown out of the water.
Right.
And it's been the same with a coin.
Mm-hmm.
So, you never know if the circle's going to be good for you or not.
Mm-hmm. And looking at that Saturday matchup, Lady Vols did lose 12-9, but they scored 6 in the first inning and 3 in the fifth. But Auburn looked really strong in the second and the sixth innings, scoring 5 and 3 runs respectively there. Overall, tough series for Lady Vols, but going in and playing. This team's number 11 right now in the nation.
Yeah,
they're playing against number 7.
They're still up there.
Right. This, while it was a loss in the series, I think it could strengthen the Lady Vols in some ways.
It could. Auburn's a really talented team, and they've come out of nowhere, really.
Definitely.
And you ran into one of the best pitchers in the country with Auburn, too. That did help me.
Definitely. But the Lady Vols' next game will be on Tuesday. They have a doubleheader against Eastern Kentucky, so that should be exciting. And then they have a home series this weekend against LSU. But looking over at Vols baseball, Kristen Stewart was named SEC Player of the Week this past week. It's the first time getting weekly honors in his college career, which just blows my mind.
It is.
He's a junior.
Think he would have like 4 or 5 of those by now. The kind of player he is, and all the stuff he did this summer.
Definitely.
With USA Baseball.
Yeah, this is a junior we're talking about, but this past week, he hit 500 with 1 triple, 3 home runs, 6 runs scored, and a team leading 10 RBIs over 4 games last week. That is just absolutely impressive. He recorded 18 total bases whenever they went to Arkansas State on April 1st, and then also against Ole Miss in their series last week as well. So, Kristen, this isn't really much of a surprise, him getting this honor. I think it's long overdue, though.
Definitely.
This is easily, if he's not the strongest player, he is definitely one of the top players on this Vols squad. But like I said, they played a series against Ole Miss, and they won the series 2-1. Friday, they lost 10-7. Tough loss there, but Kristen was 2 for 3. Batting with 3 RBIs and a home run. So, good performance there from him. But, just looking at the scoring, Ole Miss looked really strong from the second to the fifth inning. They scored 3 runs in the second, 2 in the third, 3 in the fourth, and 1 in the fifth. They just looked really dominant batting.
Yeah, and Ole Miss is a good team.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of similar to softball. We expected this to be an interesting year.
Right.
For both teams, didn't quite know how they would do.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk to most people out there, they said, okay, next season is the year Tennessee baseball is really, they're going to compete for SEC titles.
Right.
They're going to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody was expecting them to be, a top 6 finisher in the SEC to top 8, worst case.
Right.
And they haven't played like that. For whatever reason, they've just struggled to put it all together.
Mm-hmm.
But, maybe now this is the corner that Tennessee need to turn this year to get to where people thought they had the potential to be.
Right.
But, it's kind of a need to be successful year for Dave Serrano in order to even get next year. And there's a lot of elements that'll go into this.
Mm-hmm.
I think he can have a little bit worse year now after the whole Donnie Tyndall debacle.
Right.
With everybody wanting Dave Hart gone, then he hires Rick Barnes. Now that's all silence. The last thing he probably needs is having to fire another coach that he hired.
Mm-hmm.
So that maybe helps, but you still have to have a little bit of disappointment with this team. This is the first SEC series they've won all year.
Right.
So hopefully that's the corner they needed to turn, and they put it together.
Mm-hmm.
But they've just never seemed to be able to link everything up. And part of that's the weather that they had to deal with at the beginning of the year. You essentially played it seems like 3 games and then walked right into the SEC.
Right.
And let's face it, this year, the SEC in baseball might just be the toughest conference in the country.
As expected.
As expected. They have been for several years.
Right.
And so when you walk straight into, conference play with nowhere near the games on your belt every other team does, you're at a disadvantage and you have to play catch-up. So hopefully we've caught up and we've turned the corner, but only time's going to tell.
Right, and looking at the rest of the series, Saturday the Vols won 6-3. Brett Marks he got the win with this game. He threw 5 1/3 innings, but Andy Cox came in for the save there for the Vols. And then on Sunday, the Vols won the series completely, getting the win 4-2 on Sunday. Really big win there for them against this Ole Miss squad. Ole Miss, I mean, they're a pretty strong team. They aren't one of the best in the SEC, I would say, but Drake Ownby looked really good in this game. He threw 8 innings yesterday in the win against Ole Miss. So that was really impressive there from him. But the next game that the Vols will see will be on Tuesday against Western Carolina. That'll be at Western Carolina, so that'll be a really exciting game. It'll be at 6 o'clock, but it's not on SEC Network or anything, but you can definitely check for updates on the UT Sports website. And quick note, happy opening day, MLB fans. So great that it's finally here. Last night was opening night, and we saw the Cardinals beat the Cubs. I think everybody expected that one. I was hoping the Cubs would have a little bit stronger of a game, but, I mean, the Cardinals had 10 hits as opposed to Chicago's 5, so, I mean, that wasn't much of a surprise there, but the Cubs are really lacking right now in their outfield, so hopefully that can just get strengthened a little bit. I know the Cubs they've really struggled in the outfield as of late anyways. Yeah. Last season wasn't too good for them, but I think it'll be an interesting year for the Cubs. I mean, they have Lester, so there's a lot to look forward to, and I've been saying for the past probably 6 years that the Cubs would win it all in 2015. It's 2015, I want that to happen, so it might not happen, but hey, I'm going to stick with that prediction.
You're going to be a lot closer than most people would have thought you would
exactly.
When you said that. I mean, you know, this is not the Chicago team that we're used to seeing. This is a Chicago team that your great-great-great-great-grandfather, right. I think that covers 100-something years.
Yeah, something like that.
Was used to seeing.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, last night was a little bit of a disappointment.
Right.
There's definitely a little bit more hype around that game.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, it's like you said, it's opening day.
Right.
It's a great day. I sent out a tweet earlier. It's like, yay, it's opening day. Why am I in class? When will this finally become a national holiday?
Right.
It should. Let's just make it happen, people.
Right.
Somebody go start a petition. We get enough signatures. I'm sure they'll sign it. I mean, you know, President Obama's a baseball fan. You know, he'll sign it. I mean, you know, there's a lot of interesting things to look forward to this year. There's going to be a very entertaining Chicago Cubs team. The Cards are poised to make another run. The Red Sox, as much as I hate to say it, are poised to make a good run. And then you're going to have a lot of drama with some teams that are going to be really bad, including the Braves.
Yeah, after the move that happened yesterday, Kimbrel and Upton are now gone, so I think that's all of the Uptons now.
How about the Padres?
Yeah, they are gone to the Padres. The Padres sent over a bunch of players and a pick for the draft this year, actually. So, I mean, 45th pick. 45th. So, I mean, that's kind of interesting there. But looking at today's matchups, I mean, right now you have the Blue Jays and Yankees going. It's bottom of the 8th, and the Blue Jays are up 6-1 there against the Yankees in New York. So that's really impressive. The Rockies are playing the Brewers right now. Rockies are winning in the top of the 4th, 7-0. That's a crazy score there. Thought the Brewers would get some runs, but they have 3 hits as opposed to the Rockies' 11. Phillies are losing right now to the Red Sox in the end of the second, 1-0. Orioles are beating the Rays 1-0 right now as well. The Tigers beat the Twins 4-0. Tigers racked up 10 hits in that game. And games that we still have left to play, the Mets and Nationals play at 4. White Sox take on the Royals. Angels, Mariners, Pirates, and Reds at 4:10. I will be watching that one. Very excited for that. Liriano will be taking on Cueto in that matchup, so that'll be really exciting at the GAB, so a lot to look forward to there. Padres and Dodgers, Braves and Marlins at 4:10. I know a lot of people will be tuning in for that one. Indians and Astros, Giants play the Diamondbacks, Rangers and Athletics to top out the night at 10:05 tonight. So opening day is underway. We already have some games finished, so a lot to be looking forward to at the MLB. Nice to have it back. It feels like it's been forever. But that's all we have this week. Completely packed show with everything going on between basketball and UT sports. But thanks for joining us this week. We will see you next week.